Raptors fans, what's happening? Long time no see. Haven't made a video in a while. Been pretty busy. Raptors also been kind of stripping me of some joy. Definitely hasn't been fun keeping up with their games this year. Not a great first year to want to cover this team online, but it is what it is. I'm back. Um, I kind of wanted to just touch base with where the Raptors are at because I think the tone of the underlying theme of a lot of what I had to say in the off season and even at the beginning of the season kind of doesn't match with what's going on right now because the last 2 months have been very unique for the Raptors if you think about it. I don't think anyone foresaw this or anything like this at the end of last season or during the off season or even at the beginning of the year before Pascal got hurt. I think a lot of us were pretty optimistic about where things are going. I think a lot of us would have bet that we saw improvements to the team this year. So to see things fall off like this, it's kind of shocking, I can't lie. But with where I'm at right now, a couple things really, there's a couple things I think that are worth bringing up. One of the things before the season I was excited about was that I thought we had a phenomenal team president in Masai Ujiri and a phenomenal coach in Nick Nurse. And two guys that have been together for a while because obviously they've both been with the organization for years now. So I kind of always assumed that we have high level coaching, high level management. They're on the same page, and that's something that's going to give us a base as a franchise. Like we're not going to be able to sink to certain lows because we have them. That's something I felt before the offseason. And I still think that Masai is great at what he does. And ultimately, I think Nick Nurse has a certain amount of credit in the bank for obviously the championship. And even the year after the championship, I thought from a coaching standpoint, a lot of good things happened with Nick Nurse. But um, so yeah, I ultimately think he's still a high level coach, but I think something worth questioning is whether they're actually on the same page. If you look at the Raptors roster for the last 2 years, and maybe you could even include the Tampa year, basically since we moved on from Ibaka and Gasol, the Raptors teams from then on, I think, aren't really indicative of cohesion between the coach and the management. And that's kind of concerning to me. And I say that because, from Nick Nurse's standpoint, I think he would look at Masai and say, look, obviously, as an organization, our goal is to win, our goal is to get better, and our goal is to establish a culture of growth and just commitment to winning, right? So, with that being the case, the players that Nick Nurse has had to work with going forward is definitely insufficient, right? I've seen Nick Nurse go to a 7-man rotation in January. That is drastic. I've seen for a long time now that Nick Nurse has very little trust for a lot of the roster that he's working with. Um, I, like there is what even this year, 7 or 8 players that he likes playing consistently, and it feels like whenever he's playing other players, it's forced or he's just doing it because he has to. At no point does it seem like, you know what, he's playing Delano Banton because he has a vision. Like there's a purpose for Delano Banton being on the court. That's why he's there, and this is a calculated thing. When Delano Banton's on the court, it kind of feels like Nick Nurse is going, hey, give Delano a try. Maybe he'll do something. When Malachi plays, it feels the same way. When Juancho plays, it feels like it's a patchwork solution to the problems. It's not like Juancho was here because he has value that we all understand and he's being put on the court to provide that value. It doesn't feel like he has much to work with, being that he's a player, a coach that has to prioritize winning in the short term because that's what we've been doing. Um, so that's from Nick Nurse's standpoint. It feels like he would have to perceive that the front office isn't quite lined up with what he wants from players. And then on the flip side, I think from the management standpoint, they would look at Nick Nurse and say, "Well, we brought in players that we think have a future and have some potential or purpose that isn't being realized. So you could look at Utah Watanabe being a player that got very little run and then went on to be a bench player for the Nets who gets minutes nightly and contributes to a team that's winning a lot of games in the East. You look at Ish Wainwright and Saban Lee and a flurry of players that were in training camp for the Raptors or a part of the Raptors 905 or a part of our organization that have went on to be serviceable NBA players elsewhere in the league to a higher degree than a lot of the players that the Raptors have kept on their roster. And you'd have to look at it like, well, maybe there's a coaching failure here, or the coach is looking to utilize players differently than we're putting on this team. Um, Again, I can't sit here and say with certainty that I can identify for sure that Nick Nurse and Masai aren't on the same page and they don't have an idea of what the other person wants. But when I look at the results, I have a hard time imagining that there's not some area where they don't see eye to eye or some gap in understanding of what should be on a basketball court in terms of player attributes and just skills generally. I have like it's just the outcome of this season and even the past few seasons does not suggest that they're on the same page. So that's one thing that I think I look at and I have some concerns and some doubts about whether this is something we'll see last for another 5 years. Of course, I don't want to hit the panic button and suggest that, this is an issue that needs to be resolved right now, but I think it's something to watch. It's something to watch this off season and the next off season and any future off seasons. What are the outcomes of the moves that are made? Are the players that are brought to training camp to try out for the team are the ones that Nick Nurse keeps the best players that we had to choose from? Are the guys that we cut, are they going to go somewhere else and be NBA players? Are the players that we let leave as free agents, are they going to go somewhere else to another environment, and are they going to flourish? We'll have to keep an eye on that. And the other thing that I always maybe took for granted as a Raptors fan was that aside from player attributes and I guess the kind of player that should be on a basketball court, I always looked at our organization as one that made sense, one that was calculated, one that knew what they were doing and were sensible in a way that a lot of organizations aren't. And when I look at the results on the basketball court this year, I'm a little bit confused. And the main thing I'm looking at is that I think there's a little bit of tension between long-term thinking and short-term thinking, and one that it's kind of concerning when you look at it. And I'll unpack it like this. Our roster was built with the thinking that we're going to take players that have good attributes when it comes to defensive potential and are good players defensively right now in terms of skill and in terms of commitment to defense. As a whole, we're going to bring players that are clearly here for their defense, and we're going to allow them to grow on the other side of the court as far as their offensive skills grow, whether it's shooting, dribbling, anything, just passing, all of it. Those are things that are going to come as time goes on, but the defensive stuff is what's going to be present right now. That's long-term thinking. That's a project. That's something that you commit years to. You don't have such a slanted roster and expect to win now. I think that doesn't quite make sense. I thought we pulled it off last year, but I think this year the shortcomings of that approach have really shown more. So the idea that we're going to get a roster that's so concentrated in one set of skills and attributes and so in need of other skills and attributes, to me, that's a long-term project. That's long-term thinking. You match that with the idea that we need to be trying to win every game at all costs. And what does that mean? That means playing our veteran players or our main players a ridiculous amount of minutes. That means utilizing the 7-man rotation we did in January and February of last season. This year, that means guys like Pascal Siakam, obviously Fred VanVleet playing ridiculous minutes, leading the league in minutes, and if not leading, being close. And in certain spurts, in certain 2 week spans and 1 month spans, being one or two in the league. These guys playing a high level of minutes, clearly looking gassed or unhealthy, gassed in Siakam's case, unhealthy in Fred's case, and just not really being themselves as a result of it. That that approach plus the way the roster is built, they don't make sense together to me. I don't understand the point of having such a roster that's so far away from being able to win now in terms of a skill standpoint and pressuring the team to win now to the extent that you're overusing the players that could maybe be a part of your project in the future, right? So when Scotty Barnes and Precious Achua become much better offensive players because they have a better handle, they have a better shot, better feel for the game, when they get to that level eventually, let's say in 2 to 3 years, right? Van Vliet and Siakam would be in their early 30s, roughly 32, and could still be able to contribute to that team. But you actually run the risk of jeopardizing that if you play them these ungodly minutes and clearly tax their body over the course of the regular season. I just struggle to see the point. And I understand the value in winning. I'm not the person that needs to be explained why winning is important in sports. And I thought the playoff experience last year was it was valuable. It was good for Scotty to get those minutes. It was good for Trent and Achua. Those three guys in particular. I thought it was great that they got playoff experience last year. But if that's at the expense of Van Vliet's health and Siakam's lungs, because he just looks gassed out there as of late, I don't quite see the point. I don't think it's crazy to suggest that maybe the best players we have should play standard minutes, and we should make a push to win the games with a normal bench rotation. And if that means we lose the games, then if anything, that says something about the team. That says that the team needs fixing in this, or it needs more players, it needs better players. If we play a regular rotation and we lose, that's a sign that the team needs to be better. But what it's going to do in the long term is not tax the bodies of your best players, and you're going to give minutes to the younger players that could maybe benefit from getting minutes. In a way, I think the two approaches, right, clearly the long-term approach to roster building and the short-term approach to playing games, they could maybe work a bit more harmoniously that way. But I think, if anything, the way we're doing things, it sabotages both approaches, because there's a lot of young players that are either not playing, or they're just, or someone like Scotty Barnes is playing crazy minutes. And honestly, the way things are going maybe aren't the best for their long-term development. Clearly, the guys that are playing, it's not the best for their development. But also, Siakam and Van Vliet basically being the main guys on the court and being the priorities for the offense, that's maybe not the best for Scotty Barnes' development, right? You're focused on winning now, in a way could hinder the long-term development of your younger players. And then the approach to having a roster that's not ready to win now, it gets in the way of your aim to win games immediately, right? Like, what I'm trying to say is that I see different things that the Raptors prioritize. I see them as contradictory to each other, and I don't understand it. I don't get the point. I'm open-minded to the idea that I'm a little bit too far removed from professional sports at the highest level to maybe understand the approach, but I just don't get it, and it's concerning because I always thought, no, we're the smart franchise. We are the coherent, sensible franchise, and we don't do stupid stuff. But I don't know. I think in the grand scheme of things, a part of our approach might be a little bit stupid. So that's where I'm at. Those are my thoughts. It's been a while. It's definitely good to be here again. I'm excited to make more content. I'm going to switch things up a little bit. So if you guys enjoyed what I've done up to this point, I'm looking to make things a little bit better. If you guys have any feedback, any ideas, let me know. But yeah, definitely tap into the channel and stay tuned. I'll see you guys around. Where is my thing? There it is. I'll see you guys around. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and find me on all socials at Toronto Hoop Talk.